Hi, and welcome to another edition of Tako Talk. My name is Stephen Tako, author of the book Motivated to Act. And I actually have a guest here today. We're doing a little special episode. My guest is Dr. Kathie Mathis. And Kathie, thank you so much for coming on to the show today. It's really great to see you.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, the reason I have Kathie on the show today is because we had an incident happen up in Santa Clarita, California just yesterday. There was a 15-year-old teenager that on Instagram posted pictures of ammunition and a picture of a school that had the same name of a local school in Santa Clarita, and was threatening to go ahead and kill all kinds of students at school. And and then I don't know what was going on. Apparently the kid was just a hoax, apparently, but now the kid is arrested. Stuff like this is happening. There's copycats. And then there's people out there actually doing it. So we have a psychologist here, that Dr. Kathie. Thank you so much again for coming out. I just wanted you to share with our audience a little bit about your experiences and how do we handle stuff like this, and where were the parents, and do we blame the parents? Where do we get help? Where do we go from here?
That's a lot of questions, so I'll try to break it down and start somewhere here. Yes, it is not that unusual that in this day and age, social media is used for a bully or somebody who wants to scare somebody else, because it is instant gratification, if I can use the word gratification, for the person doing it. So that in the past, before that came along, they couldn't touch as many people as quickly, obviously, as they can now. So it was more work. It was more of a one-on-one, where now with social media, somebody can get on and do exactly what this young person did. When I was reading the article, because I read it, and it said he thought it was a joke. He did it as a joke. He thought it was funny. Well, if you go back to when you were a teen, if you can, some of us can still remember those times.
Yeah. Oh gosh, it's a good decade ago or so.
Yeah, not too long ago, okay? But teens don't think things through, number one. Mm-hmm. Children don't think things through. They don't have, a lot of them, now some do, but there's a lot of them that don't have consequential thinking because their parents haven't taught it to them. So for him to have thought, this is funny, let me put a likeness of the school, let me, name and do what this was that he was naming and doing, or allegedly going to do.
Right.
He thought that was funny. Now, first of all, anybody with any maturity would not think that was funny, because we know the repercussions, we know the consequences, we know the end results for something like that. But young people don't think it all the way through. So for him, he might have been bored. Obviously, he wasn't going to do a terrorist act, according to him, because the police report said, or the newspaper said, he thought it was funny.
Right.
But when we are on the receiving end of something like that, we don't know that. We don't know who that person is. We don't even see that person as coming through a media, as you were talking about, that they can hide behind and be protected by. So we have to take everything like that seriously, because we don't know. We don't know if that person is really going to do that or not. So for him to be arrested and for the police to get involved and follow up, absolutely. They were doing exactly what they should have been doing under the circumstances. And I want to go back to, for a minute, what you were talking about, the families. Kids who bully, because we're talking about bullies and not just people who threaten to bully and who think it's funny. But when we're really talking about the actual perpetrator of bullying, bullies aren't born. Bullies are raised.
Created that way. Huh?
Yes. And in my research, because my population that I serve are mostly people in the abuse arena, which bullying is an abuse. Mm-hmm. One of the things that I have discovered in my research is that children between the age of 2 and 6 decide to be a bully.
Really?
That's how young they are when they decide. They are usually raised in a home where the parents are bullies, or at least one of them is. So it's an adult or an adult-like model role model that they are watching and wanting to emulate. But the decision is between the age of 2 and 6 to be like that person. Between the age of 6 and 12, they really begin to implement what decision they've made. The youngest child that was brought to me was 3 years of age.
Wow.
And he had been kicked out of 6, was it daycares, I think, for little kids that age? I'm too old, I don't remember what my daughter, preschool, whatever. But he'd been kicked out of 6 and nobody else would allow him in because his reputation was out there. And when his mother brought him to me at 3 years of age, I said to her, what's he doing at 3 years of age? He was kicking, he was punching, he was taking pencils and stabbing the other kids, he was spitting on the other kids. All at 3 years of age. And I said to her, where did he learn that? He's 3 years old. I don't know. Well, when I finally got down to the bottom of what was going on in this child's life, Daddy was the bully in the family, bullying other people in the family system, and the little boy was watching it. And guess what he had decided at 3 years of age?
To be like Daddy.
To be like Daddy. So when we have people who bully, they're modeling it after usually as parents. So we have to look at all of the things that are going on, not always just culturally, but family cultures as well has a part in bullying. And always when I'm working with a child that's a bully, I'm working with the parents because it's hand in hand.
My friend Cicely Gish was on an episode, you might have seen that one,
I did.
And she was probably the only guest I think I've had so far that admitted that she was a bully, had been a bully, and yeah, it's her father is where she basically learned it from. Now this kid there's a lot of kids that don't even want to go to school right now because just of the threat, this kid said that there were other kids, I guess on the Instagram, there were other kids involved that apparently it was just him. But that's a form of terrorism.
Absolutely, and by law, if you make a threat to take someone's life, it's called a terrorist threat. And so it is a form of terrorism. Bullies come from homes where there's bullying. When I teach anger management, angry people come from angry homes.
Right,
They're not born that way. We all have anger, but that doesn't mean we're all what? Killing people and bullying people and everything else.
Well, there is the psychosis of it. There's people who have mental imbalances.
Mental illness, yes, absolutely.
So I mean, I would say that if there are some of these kids, not to say that the kid is going to somebody's threatening to kill a bunch of people, all of a sudden you can exactly point at one of the parents because so how. I guess there'd have to be a whole psychological analysis on these kids.
For those who have a mental illness, one of the things that happens is a lot of times families know it, but they won't do anything about it because they're embarrassed and they don't want people to stigmatize them. So they ignore what they're seeing in their home. Mental illness doesn't cause bullying. It will be a fuel for it, but it doesn't cause it. Just like anger doesn't cause domestic violence. Anger is a fuelant to learned attitudes, behaviors, and beliefs that are already there. Drugs and alcohol don't cause abuse. It's a fuelant to what's already there. The only people that you could actually stop and say, well, maybe genetics or something has something to do with that is the psychopath. Because the psychopath, as we all know, they've now found there's a gene. That's a hereditary gene in a psychopath. So they're born with a gene. But again, I'm going to go back to, in the research on that, they have found that still, even if you're born with that gene, doesn't mean you are going to be a psychopath. Because between age 2, 6, and 12, children are making choices. So I go back to some of the things that parents need to do is to be teaching their children what? Better choice making.
Right.
Because if a psychopath doesn't have to be a full-blown psychopath because of choices, that should tell us something about how important good parenting is.
Well, certainly it makes so much sense to go to the root of the problem. and that's often with the parents. And so it's not having the communication with the kid, not setting a good example themselves.
Not following through when they see mental illness or other things that are clues.
Yeah, not exposing the problem for what it is and
Yes.
getting the right type of help,
Right.
you know, that's needed. I would say that my big question is, you know, what can we do right now to educate, what's the best thing we can do right now to educate parents?
Well, first of all, for parents who want to have that, there's opportunity. What I've discovered in working with bullies, the children bullies, is their parents think that their child is doing exactly what they want them to be doing. So you have adults who don't want to change and who look at their child and go, yeah, that's my boy, he's tough. You know those bumper stickers that says my child can beat your child, or you know those kinds of beat up your child.
Beat up your honor student.
Yeah, you know.
Because being smart is really stupid.
Yeah,
so let's
and
beat
like
the heck
that's
out of them.
funny.
Yeah.
To me, that's not funny.
It's so ignorant.
So, you know, going back to, you know, what are your family rules? What does your family system look like? Who told you that being macho means go beat up the kid, or being a girl who's in charge and wanting power and control is to go out and bully other girls and boys and whatever? Where does that thought process come from? It comes from generations. So when I'm working with families, I'm going to say, where did you learn these things? And so for people who've learned them but they want to change them, now those parents and those family systems you can teach, because it's a learned attitude, behavior, and belief. So you can change it.
Right.
For people who have a mental illness, you're not going to change some of the dynamic there because of the type of mental illness it might be. But the repercussions are always, if you want help and you want opportunity for change, it's there. We all know how to stop bullying. But until you have people in family systems that teach their children that's not appropriate, you're going to have bullies.
Right, and you've got parents that are hiding the truth.
Yes.
They're guarding their kids, and they think it's great because it's my kid's the higher on the pecking order,
Yes.
you know. And yet I've read that particularly boys who are bullies are that 30% higher chance. You might know the statistic better. 30% higher chance of being arrested as an adult. And I don't know if it's a higher percentage or not, but it's something that I read. So one last thing I would do, and then we have to close because we're almost out of time, and I could talk to you for like hours. But that is, we had talked a little bit earlier, and I just want to end on this, and that is kids that are hiding behind their electronic devices. And it just makes them so much more bolder. As a psychologist, what kind of advice can you give to people who are texting back and forth? You know, you can't get your emotion across, you can't get the true feeling, there's misunderstandings.
In this day and age, because all the young people are growing up, that is their way of communication. Everything is texting. I work with a lot of teens and 20-year-olds who are in relationships and they're having relationship problems and they're texting back and forth. They're not talking to each other. It is texting back and forth. I'm angry at you, you know, you did this, and then the other one's responding, and I'm going, and I will say, why aren't you picking up the phone? Or why aren't you meeting each other to sit down to have the conversation? And usually when I ask that question, the response is it's easier and faster this way. We are a society of easier and faster. And when kids hide behind social media and electronics and things like that to bully somebody, they don't, again, I'm going to go to the consequential thinking, they don't think it all the way through. It is an instant, I can get this out there, it's going to go everywhere. I don't have to, take time to talk to people. I don't have to take time to see them face to face. It's going out there. But what they don't realize is every person that's receiving that is receiving it in a different way based on their history and their experience, and it's affecting everybody in a different negative way. There's nothing positive about it. No. It's always being received in a negative way. And if you have somebody on the other end who was and is being bullied, who possibly may have had that bully threaten their life or something else, when they receive that, and especially if it's directed at them, they go into huge fear. They go into what anybody else would if your life was
Sure.
threatened. But yet the person on this side's laughing, they think it's funny.
Yeah.
Because they're not what? Interacting, they haven't thought it all the way through, and they don't realize that people out there have emotions that are different than theirs. And a lot of times bullies don't have a whole lot of empathy. And so how can you empathize with somebody on the other side if you don't have a whole lot of empathy? And the one last thing I want to add to that is a lot of people have the mistaken belief that bullies have low self-esteem. They don't always. Some of them have very high self-esteem and they still bully because it serves a purpose for them.
For that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, gosh, we've run out of time, but I just want to say thanks so much. Do you have a website or
I
blog,
do.
or what do you? How can people follow up with you?
They can contact me at www.drkathie.com, and Kathie is with a Kathie.
We'll have it on the screen so
Okay.
that they can see it at home. So, all right, well, thanks again so much for coming on the show. You guys, particularly to all my friends in Santa Clarita that had to deal with this scare, hopefully kids out there start waking up. Parents, pay attention to what your kids are doing. Don't take anything as just, oh, that's just, he's just goofing off. I mean, take all these threats seriously. Listen to your kids and make sure that you're at least as part of your kids' lives as you possibly can. So, all right, well, thanks again, you guys, and we'll look forward to hearing from you, or actually, you'll be hearing from us here on Tako Talk. Have a great day.